Guns. They are a very hot topic in the United States. Everyone seems to have their own opinion on the subject. Before we dive into this topic, it is probably best that we get a good understanding of what we are talking about when we say the word gun.
There are three main types of guns. These guns are pistols, rifles, and shotguns. Pistols are fired with one hand and have a short barrel. Two types of pistols are revolvers and semi-automatic pistols. Rifles are fired with two hands, fire one bullet per trigger pull, and has rifling which spin and stabilize the bullet. There are bolt action and semi-automatic rifles. Shotguns have a smooth barrel that fire many pellets as opposed to bullets. There are pump action and semi-automatic shotguns. There are also weapons that you cannot legally obtain because of the NFA. These include rifles and shotguns with barrels under 16 and 18 inches long. It also places several other weapons and attachments under its rule, like machine guns, bombs, grenades, rockets, mortar, RPGs, fully automatic cannons, and silencers, including things like pen guns, knife guns, and umbrellas.
As we can see, there are a lot of types of guns. With all these guns being strewn about the American community, it is important to understand how these weapons affect the community, both from a negative and positive outlook. We'll start off with the negative.
In the United States, there are 85 million gun owners. The U.S. accounts of 4.4% of the world population and 40% of the world of guns. More than 3,000 people died in gun-related incidents in the U.S. in 2009. The majority of these people deaths being suicide followed by homicides and accidents. Homicide is the 15th leading cause of death in the U.S. and guns were involved in more than 68% of these deaths. Repeated studies have shown the presence of guns boosts the risk of gun-related violence in homes. The average number of justifiable firearm homicides, like a home invasion, was 243 between 2005 and 2010. This is 2.1% of all gun-related homicides.
And moving on to the positive.
In a research study, 1,800 incarcerated felons were interviewed about how they felt about civilian gun ownership. 30% of criminals admitted to being scared of shot at or wounded by a gun-owning victim. Only 69% knew at least one other criminal who had a similar experience. Nearly 80% claimed they intentionally avoided victims they believed to be armed. Owning a firearm can also give someone a sense of security knowing they can protect themselves if they need to. Only 1% of mass public shootings have occurred outside a gun-free zone. This shows that perpetrators know that they are safe from civilians in these areas.
Obviously, with a topic as important as guns, there are many laws pertaining to them. By far the most well-known law covering guns is the Second Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. It states, "A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed." Since then, there have been many other policies adopted. One of these laws is the National Firearms Act, which we mentioned before. The NFA was enacted in 1934 and imposes a tax on the creation and transfer of specific firearms. This includes shotguns and short-barrel rifles, machine guns, and silencers. A consequence of this law was that it limits the transactions of the firearms it defined, as the tax is very high. The NFA also requires that all firearms under its jurisdiction be registered with the Secretary of the Treasury. Another law focused on gun control is the appropriately named Gun Control Act of 1968. This law was enacted in response to the assassinations of President John Kennedy, Attorney General Robert Kennedy, and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It imposed stricter licensing and regulation on the firearms industry. It also prohibits the sale of firearms and ammunition to felons, as well as banning the sale of destructive devices such as grenades. A third law would be the Brady Handgun Violence Prevention Act of 1993. This act amended the earlier mentioned Gun Control Act of 1968. This imposes a waiting period of 5 days before a licensed dealer can sell a handgun to an unlicensed individual. This waiting period is to allow background checks to be performed on the potential buyer and prevent unstable or previous felons from acquiring deadly weapons.
I'd like to buy your deadliest gun, please.
Aisle 6, next to the sympathy cards. Whoa, careful there, Annie Oakley.
I don't have to be careful. I got a gun.
Well, you'll probably want the accessory kit, holster,
Oh, yeah.
bandolier,
Baby.
silencer,
Mm-hmm.
loudener, speed cocker.
Ooh, I like the sound of that.
And this is for shooting down police helicopters.
Oh, I don't need anything like that. Yet. Just give me my gun.
Sorry, the law requires a 5-day waiting period. We've got to run a background check.
5 days? But I'm mad now.
Yeah.
I'd kill you if I had my gun.
Yeah, well, you don't.
As you can see, this is a very complicated issue that does not have an easy answer. Most people agree that what we're doing now is not enough, but the side they lean to differs. Some want more control, some want less. Ultimately, it doesn't seem like any one solution fixes all of the problems surrounding guns.